Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. There's a slight pause then. As you can tell, we're doing this thing live. None of this pre-recorded stuff, so there will be the odd hiccup, I'm sure. But let's quickly steam in name, rank, and serial number from everybody. So Alex, Rinke, Celonis.
Hi, my name is Alex, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Celonis.
There we go. Cliff, great to have you back.
Hey, Phil. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Cliff Justice with KPMG. I'm the U.S. Head of Innovation, which includes our corporate venture capital, our studio and incubator, and our all of our internal innovation programs. So really glad to be here. Thanks.
Excellent, glad to have you back. I hope you got your haircut specially for this, right?
I did it myself.
Even more impressive. Not using the dog trimmer, I hope. All right. Oh, okay. Debjani Ghosh, first time on an HFS panel. Great to have you, Debjani.
Hi, Phil. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm Debjani, head of NASSCOM. We are the body that represents India's tech industry. And Phil, I have to thank you and your entire team for standing by all of us during the crisis and being such good friends, especially today's event. Such a wonderful gesture. Thanks a ton. Means a lot.
Thank you. I'd love to hear a bit more later about how you partner with many of the leading firms in India to drive vaccinations and things as well. So great to have you, Debjani. KD Stein at Genpact. Great to have you on here, KT.
Great, glad to be here. Hi everyone, it's Katie Stein. I'm at Genpact. And Phil, I was glad to see uptick in interest in all of the areas I oversee, such as supply chain, finance, procurement, all from a digital business process transformation. So look forward to the conversation.
Awesome. And our star of the last physical event we did is back with us again, Mary Myers, in a different capacity these days. Great to have you, Marie.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Phil. It's always a great session, and I'm looking forward to it, and looking forward to maybe one of those live sessions again. So hopefully not too far away at some point.
Awesome.
Marie Myers, CFO of HP. Great to be here today.
Great to have you back, Marie. And another person making an HFS debut is the one and only Manish Sharma, Accenture. Great to have you, Manish.
Hey, thanks, Phil. Thanks for having me. But exciting to be here with everyone here and with you, Phil. Look forward to the session. I'm the Group Chief Exec for Accenture Operations globally.
Wonderful. And then the great Ravi Kumar, I think last appearance at a live HFS event was on a screen. So he's used to this. Great to have you back with us, Ravi.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you and your audience. My name is Ravi Kumar, President at Infosys. I manage all global service lines across the firm.
Just love it. I love the background as well, Ray. I really feel like I'm in your front room because you haven't staged it at all.
Yeah, I can only do small rooms in New York City.
Fantastic. And a great friend of mine for many years, Rohit Kapoor at EXL. Great to have you, Rohit.
Thanks, Phil. It's great to be here. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm the co-founder and CEO of EXL. But I am really delighted to be here because this industry is turning out to be one of the most exciting industries. And Phil, I do want to thank you for everything that you're doing for the industry and the contributions that you're making from HFS. That's a really special touch. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank NASSCOM and Debjani for the tremendous work that they've done over the last 18 months. It's really, really been very helpful. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And we have Sandeep Dadlani, very, very popular figure, did a fantastic digital event, which inspired us a lot early this year. Great to have you here, Sandeep. You got your mute button on? Or? I know he's here. He texted me earlier. Okay. Well, we'll nudge him again in a bit. And absolutely not least, but last, is a great guy. We did a fantastic session with live last week, is Thierry Dillapot from Wipro. Great to have you back, Thierry.
Can you hear me now?
I think was that Sandeep?
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Yeah, sorry. Hi, Phil, and hi, friends. Some old friends and some new ones. Good to see you all. I'm Sandeep. I'm Chief Digital Officer at Mars. Obviously, I can't operate an unmute button. But at Mars, with a $40 billion enterprise, we are driving an amazing digital transformation. We're into pet care, chocolate confectionery, and healthy snacking, and looking forward to learning and sharing with all of you.
Wonderful. I'd love to learn more about how you're getting a lot of that to the work at home economy. And as I mentioned, Thierry at Wipro, great to have you as well.
Thanks, Phil. And hello, everyone. Thanks to Sandeep, I've got two introductions, Phil, So Thierry Delaporte, CEO and Managing Director, Wipro. Really glad to be with all of you today. It's going to be fun.
Fantastic. Right, so without further ado, let's get into some of the conversation. And the first question I wanted to throw out to everybody is quite simply, the desire to change, it's never been this great, but can we truly change the habits of our lifetimes? And maybe Manish, Sharma, Accenture, would you like to kick off? What do you think about, can we truly change?
Yeah, happy to do this. I think when we look at this, right, this what's transpired, out of this period of what I would say is unprecedented change, is leaders' expectations of what the operating model can achieve in the context of whether it is strategy, growth, and the future of work. And if you look at one of the recent research reports that we did, Fast Track to Future Ready Performance, it takes the look at the impact of operations maturity across the 4 levels of readiness, each level underpinned by progressing digital capabilities such as AI, cloud, and data, Phil, which you mentioned in your opening, right? As well as increasing level of specialized strategy. I think what our research uncovered, that organizations that achieve the highest level of maturity, what we call future ready, do so by changing the way work gets done across technology, processes, and people to achieve intelligent operations. And I think the most interesting part which we saw in this change was 2 things. One, there were only 7% of the companies which were future ready. Only 7% out of the 1,100 organizations that we looked at, right? They were 2 times more profitable and 3 times more efficient than peers that continue to leave their money on the table, right? But again, during this pandemic, what has really changed is it's about maximizing talent in an era when people are critical to success, emphasizing that human skills that distinguish us from machines, that is going to be important. And those things have come out very clearly, because we do talk about AI, data, and automation and everything else, but it is about emphasizing the human skills that distinguish us from machines that has really come out in this way.
Okay, thanks, Manish. So Cliff Justice, you're in an industry that was almost entirely reliant on contact and people, and had to make this shift. Do you feel there is a true ability to change our lifetimes habits, or are we going to snap back to where we were before?
I think there's been a desire to change for a long time, and sometimes you need a catalyst to kind of push it over. My view is that a significant part of what we do will go back to physical interaction, but it'll be that part that really requires and benefits from physical interaction. But I think that we've seen a lot of value emerge from remote interactions like this. We can do a lot more, a lot quicker. We can interact with a lot more people for shorter periods of time without losing a lot in the context of travel. So, I see a lot of conferences and a lot of interaction, a lot of face-to-face meetings, a lot more conference room interaction, a lot less traveling into an office to sit behind a desk and do phone calls. So, I think we're going to see some permanent change and turn back to 2020 and say this was the catalyst for that change.
Wonderful. Maybe Thierry, you're based in a different part of the world, in Paris, and do you feel, from your perspective, we can change these habits over a lifetime, or do you think it's going to be a major challenge?
this is the never-ending question. I think, the pandemic has been an opportunity to think more deeper about this question than ever. But, the point remains. I think what I've observed, Phil, over the last months in my interaction with CXOs from different industries, they are all very not open to change. They are absolutely working on the change. Okay, so I don't think you will find many companies that do not have a change agenda. And I think we know that technology is creating opportunities, and, there's a disruption in every single industry that are driving the need for the company to change. The point is very clear, though. It's not so much a question of technology or processes. It's really a question of people. Who's driving the change? The people, right? And so the desire to change may have never been so great. The real question is, can we truly change our lifetime habits? Indeed. And from that standpoint, I think it's a constant challenge for everyone, for every team, for every organization. The understanding of why you need to change. We always say, if you create the burning platform, then you have more opportunity to drive and to rally people around you to change. But you need to create this burning platform. It means basically people need to realize what it means to not change. But how things are. There's always this temptation to do change, but then try to go back to your comfortable place. And so I think it's a incredibly fascinating, exciting journey for companies. The more I work with companies on transformation, the more I'm convinced that it's all about people. So at the end of the day, it's how you're driving. And so we say change management. It's a lot more than that. It's culture evolution. It's how you promote change, how you're making sure that people embrace change, they understand what it means, they challenge themselves. You need to create a certain level of trust inside the organization that people can be comfortable to throw out themselves, a little bit in the unknown and take a leap of faith. And so fascinating, absolutely necessary. Everyone talks about it, but it's challenging in many places at many moments in the day. And I think, it's our focus as leader to our people and the way people can accept and drive the change that makes it a success.
That's good. Thank you, Thierry. And Katie Stein, you're in New York City. I heard that it's back to normal there. I mean, is that back too fast? Is there a definite desire to change that you're seeing from your fellow New Yorkers and what's happening in your space?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I'll talk more broadly than New York, but I think, look, here's how I look at it: is change sounds very binary. Either we're back to the old or we're into the new. And I think the new is yet to really be defined. It's really going to be some form of hybrid. Think of commerce. Commerce has been introduced and our clients like it. They like having more channels to reach their consumer, but consumers will go back in some mediums. Let's say someone goes into a store and they like the expertise they get from the storekeeper, or they like the experience in the restaurant, but they also like the digital experience. And how clients bring that together, whether it's in the virtualization of work for their employees, or whether it's for their customers, is really the strategy that has yet to, in most cases, be defined. And I think that strategy will be defined through a set of experiments. So this is really testing Agile to its limits. It's testing all of us being bimodal, being able to look through lenses of domain, digital, human-centered design, all of the things that the OneOffice embodies. And ultimately, I think it requires a whole new level of empathy. I mean, when I walk around the streets of New York, some people are wearing their masks, some people aren't wearing their masks. There's a level of empathy that we need to understand, that each of us is approaching this situation through our own lens, and how we converge is actually how we create success.
Okay, I think that's a great observation. And then I'd love to hear from you, Debjani, Ghosh, over in India, especially about you're so entrenched in a very different situation at the moment. Do you feel that you will emerge changing a lot of habits in India? Do you think things will be very different after this?
Phil, I strongly believe it. I mean, the last few months, 15 months or so, has been so devastating for us. I mean, whether directly or indirectly impacted. it's taught us some really important lessons. And I think that we will take 100 steps back if we choose not to act on those, if we go back to status quo and go back to what the world was. I think we have an opportunity to leverage a lot of these learnings to create a much better future, not just for the industry but for all of us together. And we have to leverage it. I mean, few of the things that to me have been remarkable changes that have happened in the last few months. Every conversation I have with the leaders of the tech industry in India, in the last few months, employee wellness, employee engagement has become the absolute number one priority across countries, across companies. While they always cared about it, but it was never so, much at the top. It is without any compromise the number one priority. And the way the companies have acted to help employees, to help families, I mean, this it's just been remarkable. The second part of it, which I think is going to reinvent this industry, and you talk a bit about it in your presentation also, is this emergence of new business models and the choices it brings to people, the choice to work where I want to work, whether offline, online, at home, or in campus, whether full time or as a gig worker, etc. I think that's going to create tremendous opportunities for a country like India, which is so diverse. And we have so many people living in smaller towns, smaller cities. Imagine the opportunities it's going to create in terms of jobs. So I do hope that that never changes, and I actually believe it won't. The increased focus on building resilience. If COVID wave one was all about resilience for the tech industry in India, COVID wave two brought out empathy and resilience. And I think we've actually grown in character. And I do believe that because I'm in such close connect with all the leaders of the tech industry in India. I can see it, I can feel it. We have grown so significantly in character that it'll be a shame to go back to where we were. Just work from home has decreased carbon emission by 85% in Indian IT companies. We should not go back to where we were, and I don't think we will. I think sustainability and having a being more conscious about the environment is now becoming the way we think. And CEOs are beginning to realize that it's strongly aligned with profitability. So business and sustainability goes hand in hand. I mean, these are some of the remarkable changes that I have personally seen in the leadership, in the companies, in the conversations we are having. So Phil, I do hope that we don't go back to where we were. I do hope that we will leverage each of these changes to build a much better future for all of us.
Thank you. That's very heartening to hear. And as I said, we're all very appreciative of your efforts with these difficult times. So let's shift gears a bit. We spoke a lot about the cloud, which is dominating our conversations right now, and the fact that many companies recognize they have to be there, but they're still struggling to figure it out. Ravi, Kumar at Infosys, you guys have put a lot of emphasis on this lately. Do you feel that it's actually happening, or do you think there's still a lot of lip service that's being paid? I think you got your mute on, Ravi.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for that question. This is certainly happening. It was happening even before the pandemic hit us. The pandemic has actually, in some ways, accelerated the movement into the cloud, because business models across the world, across industries, are not just getting digitized, but they're also getting dispersed. We heard about hybrid workplaces. That's one of the reasons why the cloud is such an important foundational pillar. If you go back to the underpinnings of the cloud early on, it started as a tool for driving compute and storage as a service. but it's kind of significantly transformed itself to a general purpose technology. A general purpose technology is something which improves over time, it spawns downstream innovation, and it kind of is very pervasive. So it started with agility. New digitally native companies used it for innovation infrastructure at scale. Now, during the pandemic, we're using the cloud for resilience and connected products and connected systems as digitization takes over new products. And more importantly, in the times we're all living in, it's also redefining the core versus non-core. One of the large programs we are doing with one of the automotive companies talks about how the firm is actually focused on moving everything into connected systems and how the cloud is actually helping them to do so. But more importantly, it's actually giving away all its non-core to companies like Infosys or system integrators like us, who could give it back to them as a service. So the cloud, in many ways, is going to reorganize and reimagine the enterprise. You're going to find an inflection point for restructuring the enterprise with infrastructure as a service at the bottom of the stack, with AI and automation tools above it, with data platforms and modular software above it, and reimagining the enterprise using the cloud. It's going to be $1 trillion opportunity in the next 2 to 3 years. And if we have to leverage this, it is going to be an orchestration of an ecosystem of players, cloud innovators, system integrators, hyperscalers, all coming together to reimagine the enterprise and drive network effect of value, as I call it, with the cloud. So that's what the cloud is going to do to every enterprise, every industry. Industries are going through transition, and they're going to be powered by the cloud. Every company, every industry is going to be a cloud AI and data company, or in some ways, every industry is going to be a technology industry, and that's going to be pivoted on the cloud.
Thank you, Ravi. And I'm going to get Mary Myers to give us a flip side as a CFO these days. How are you managing a move into the cloud at HP in terms of internally, and whether you feel it's moving as fast as everybody's thinking it is?
Yeah, no, thanks, Phil, and good morning. So, look, I think the cloud transition has absolutely kept its pace through the pandemic, and I'd say it's probably accelerated as we're coming out of the pandemic. And for companies, either you're lucky enough and you're sort of born cloud digitally native, or you're a legacy like us and you're going through a major transition. And it's no easy feat, is what I say, Phil. I mean, you really have to have grit to sort of see it through, but it isn't even a choice point. I mean, for companies like ourselves moving to the cloud, you started out this event by sort of, talking about process mining and the cloud. I mean, a lot of those capabilities are not going to be really, you're not going to be able to leverage the full extent unless you can make that cloud transition. So I would say that, yes, the pace is definitely there. We are moving faster and faster. And then moreover, new businesses are getting spawned, completely in the cloud. And these are, going to be cloud-based future businesses. So I think you're seeing it from two ways. There's the sort of like the legacy infrastructure that has got to continue to that transition, and the pace of that transition. As a CFO, I mean, obviously, you want to make sure it's economical, it makes sense, and gets you to where you to the destination you want to get to. And then obviously, the newer businesses, you're just going to, they're going to be completely cloud enabled from day one. I think the only sort of nit that's out there that's become a lot more prevalent during the pandemic is the risk around cyber. And it has certainly probably made CIOs perhaps a little bit more skittish about, how they manage that cloud transition, what those risks looks like. And certainly I know that's a conversation we tend to have more frequently these days around some of the risks of cloud-based offerings versus, on-prem. So I would say that the cyber risks are certainly very high on everybody's mind, and I think in the pandemic have become somewhat elevated. But just to close, I mean, there's just no doubt that the cloud transition is just an enormous evolving trend, and you see it in the financials of people like Microsoft and Google and others in AWS. So yeah, the sooner we get there, the better, Phil.
Sooner we get there, the better. Thank you very much for that. I'd like to get Sandeep, Chief Digital Officer at Mars, Sandeep Dadlani. I'd love to know your strategy here, because you've done a great job articulating how you've leveraged analytics and AI, particularly in the confectionery business, but also pet care and some of the consumer areas that you guys do. How are you approaching the cloud based on especially what Marie says about this has to be in the cloud for it to be effective? How does that work? And is this moving at a pace that we're predicting?
Phil, at the beginning of the pandemic, Mars was already 66% on the cloud. For a $40 billion company to be 2/3 on the cloud, we felt proud. I felt proud. But the pandemic made us reflect that cloud is not a cost play. I will repeat, cloud is not a cost play. In fact, if you propagate cloud enough in your enterprise, you will, as Mary will probably attest, have cloud costs overtake any other on-premise costs that are there on the enterprise. Cloud is a speed play, an innovation play, and a business model play. That's it. That epiphany allowed us to work with Satya and Judson at Microsoft to announce a much more expanded relationship where we could, as part of the cloud, digitize our factories, launch 18 new direct-to-consumer offerings. We had launched about 5 in the previous 10 years. We launched 18 in the last 12 months. We started enabling completely new business models in the cloud in the last 18 months. There are players here in this panel, there are friends like Genpact, who started putting in AI-based SaaS services on our supply chain, all on the cloud. Accenture is helping us digitize our factories. Infosys is helping us in select other events, etc. And so our realization for the future is this is not about being 100% on the cloud or not. This is about increasing the clock speed of the enterprise, the hustle in the enterprise. And therefore, Thierry talked about this human desire to change and willingness to change. I think the cloud just helps us with that hustle. That's all there is to it. And if you see cloud as that sort of a tool, then you're ready to drive exponential change. Otherwise, if you look at it as a cost play, you will be surprised, to be honest, in the end.
Okay, not a cost play. I think that's a very resonant answer. And Rohit Kapoor, you run a business services company, and you've made some waves around moving process into the cloud. How do you approach this in terms of data and process? How do you become a cloud company from a business services company, Rohit?
Thanks, Phil. It's a big change, but we were already on the path for making this change. So first of all, I do think that the mindset in the world has changed completely, right? And the mindset has become a lot more open. The mindset has become a lot more relationship driven. The mindset has become a lot more execution focused, and shift from cost to revenue growth and the focus on the end customer, which I think, to Sandeep's point, results in a lot of innovation being applied rather than innovation being suppressed. So we are actually in a very exciting time period. Our viewpoint is that most organizations are under leveraged on creating real value out of data. And they do not have the right means, the right tools, the right talent, the right setup for being able to leverage data. And in order to leverage data, you have to move to the cloud, because you cannot have speed unless you are on the cloud and have access to that data. You cannot have change and agility unless you're on the cloud. And therefore, the whole shift is actually taking place from an on-premise kind of a model much more to the cloud. Now, it's not going to happen where everybody's going to throw away whatever they've got on-premise and move everything to the cloud. But we think on the data aspect, the shift to the cloud is actually the first and the most important step that needs to be undertaken. And that's why having a receiving center on the cloud, which is really an AI operating system, where you can actually make changes to the data, clean that data, and actually reduce work downstream, make that much more efficient, and be able to energize that, that becomes really critical. And here's the other piece. I think everybody spoke about cybersecurity, hybrid working, remote, and some of the challenges associated with that. I think the mindset shift today has become a lot more accepting of an open environment. And that open environment extends all the way to the cloud. So I think that that shift is going to be really, really helpful for all of us.
Right. Thank you. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk a lot about some of these mega deals that we've seen a spate of that have been signed lately. Let's get to the heart of where these are being executed. Debjani, NASSCOM, are they reshaping our industry, or is this a reaction to the pandemic economy? How do you see this evolving and playing out?
Sorry, Phil, could you just repeat the question once? I missed the first part of it. Sorry.
Sure. So we're talking about the wave of mega deals that we've seen signed in the last few months, and how that is that a reaction, or is that the way of things to come?
Based on four trends that we are tracking and that we're seeing across the industry. I strongly believe that this is a structured change and not a transitional phase that we are seeing. I mean, the first trend is just look at the demand growth and how sustainable the demand growth is. We recently did research with McKinsey that indicated that technology spending as a percentage of the GDP will go up to around 7.5% in this decade, from 5.5% in the last decade. There was another study by HSI which showed that deal flows are also increasing in verticals that were much more severely impacted by the pandemic, like manufacturing, energy, utilities, etc., which are getting ready with vaccination to come back to work, to come back to factory operations, and investing heavily in building more resilient supply chains. I do believe that these will stay very important priorities in the near future and some more time. BFSI vertical growth. I mean, we're seeing a very strong growth across BFSI. It's primarily being driven by the US banks, but we are seeing it across Europe and other geographies too. Travel is expected to come back. So net, I think the first indicator that we look at is how sustainable is the deal growth. And that looks to be pretty sustainable, the demand growth, and that looks to be pretty sustainable at this stage. And COVID has accelerated digital transformation agenda by around 3x. There's no denying that. And that is not going to go away anytime soon. We've all talked about, the strong tailwinds with respect to digitization, cloudification. Our estimate is that digital and cloud is estimated to be roughly a 600 to 700 billion opportunity for the industry. And once again, it's going to be a multi-year plan, and absolutely not going to drop off the radar anytime soon. So it's definitely here to stay, and we will see the change happening across verticals. I mean, that especially in a country like India, but I think it's true for all over the world. We are going to see the move to cloud happening across every single vertical. So there's going to be huge opportunity there. The third one, and the one that I find most interesting, is how the service provider landscape is changing. If you look at the IT industry, and this is the one we study a lot, the planned shift from cost advantage to customer advantage has never been more obvious than it is today. We're seeing companies calibrate strategies very, very carefully to tap into the emerging opportunities and build their new sources of differentiation. be it increased investment in developing IP-led platforms, be it significantly increasing focus on strategic partnerships with hyperscalers, SaaS companies. The kind of deals, the kind of partnerships that are being announced, we've not seen anything like this before. Setting up global innovation hubs. Most of the companies are now working on setting up centers of excellence, innovation hubs in some of these emerging technologies across the world. M&A is an all-time high. And of course, we're seeing some basic changes in traditional business model, like the move towards outcome-based revenue model. All of this shows that the industry is reinventing, and it's reinventing very fast. And it is reinventing because it believes that the future is going to be very different, and status quo is not going to cut it. And last but not the least, I think the growing investment that the industry is making in talent, that itself tells you that the opportunities that we see out there are real. They're here to stay, but we have to change the way we played the game. We have to invest in our people. We have to grow the new talent sets that are required for success. When I look at the talent development, the skill development plans across our companies, it almost feels like we are investing to win the war for next gen cloud and AI talent. And that gives me a lot of confidence about the stability of the future. So overall, Phil, I'm pretty confident that the opportunity is very real. We all know that this is not going to be the last pandemic that we experience. I hope we don't experience another one anytime soon, but we all know that it is coming. And I think there is a strong understanding across the industry that we have to invest today to be ready for it. And not just our industry, but whether I'm talking to chiefs of hospitals, manufacturing companies, retail companies, the conversation and the tone is exactly the same.
Interesting. Thank you. That was very succinct and gave us some flavor for some of the preparation we're seeing in India. Thierry at Wipro, you've won a couple of these mega deals yourselves, and you're reorganizing your company for more simplicity. Does that mean that you see more these very large scale deals coming in, or do you think it's going to be a mixed bag? How do you see this unraveling as we sort of limp back to reality?
First of all, Phil, I strongly believe, like I suspect many in this forum today, that the change that we've gone through over the last 12 months are fundamentals. And for one reason, as a consumer, you have changed your habits. As an employee, you have changed your habits. And this is a fact. You will not go back to, the way you were operating either as a consumer or as an employee or as an employer before. So it's fundamental change, and there's absolutely no doubt about that. Talking about the mega deals, yes, of course, COVID-19 pandemic has definitely triggered the need for businesses to undertake transformation of the larger scale. But the need, and even more the desire to transition, is something that has been discussed among the business leaders for a decade. Okay, many of the large deals that have come to fruition during the pandemic were months in the making before. Okay, but the pandemic certainly encouraged the need to transform. We've discussed that today. The utilization of digital technologies becoming a matter of urgency to cope with the new ways of working we had to adopt. This definitely meant that those within the IT and business services industry had to assess whether they could provide the right services to their customers in record time across the broader scale. And so it's about, thinking differently. It's about dealing with scale, and it's about dealing with speed for, companies. Indeed, as I believe Sandeep spoke and said a few minutes ago, it's not a question of cost. When you're driving a true transformation program in your organization, if you're doing it for cost, I believe you're going to get 20 or 30% of the potential of your transformation. If you don't fail your transformation. If you're really looking at the potential for your business, the impact of the transformation happening across sectors, again, the agility and the opportunity that are driven and, open through the cloud transformation. This is massive. I want to say one point on the cloud. I wanted to say earlier on, listening to my colleagues, 2-3 years ago, Phil, I remember connecting with CEOs of companies telling me, cloud, we are not sure. Cloud, for sovereignty of data, for some security issues, we are very conservative. By the way, for any topic related to infrastructure, please talk to my CIO. Okay? Today, this is absolute CEO agenda, absolutely top #1 strategy topic to discuss, whether it's, overall transformation, if it's step by step. They indeed are working on the strategy, and I was interested to see your numbers and the percentage and the fact that there's still a lot to do across industries. But I think the train has left the station. This is clear. This is for good. Now, the new mega deals, the deal at scale, they are at scale because they are basically, it's not about lift and shift, I'm going to take your workload and do it cheaper, and we're going to sign a 15 years contract and, you'll get the credit on day one. It's really about how can you reinvent yourself? How are you going to engage with your customers? How are you going to connect with your employees? The ones coming to the office, the one working remotely, and so on. How do you work in your ecosystem? And this is absolutely clear that, there's an acceleration of those opportunities. They do not exist because you see them. They exist because you create them. And so it's really triggering the need for everyone to challenge its, own thinking and really come with ideas. Because for me, mega deals come from creativity, from innovation, from different thinking.
Okay. Thank you very much, Thierry. It's excellent. Many years of experience going into that response as well. Thank you. So I wanted to get to the data piece now, and Alex, Rinke, Celonis, who's building out a very interesting platform. Could you talk a bit about what is the impact here? Is data driving strategy at this point, internally and externally?
Yeah, I think we talked a lot today about how digital transformation, in essence, is not just allowing us to save costs, but to grow faster, to innovate faster, and to truly transform the core of our organizations. And data is very much at the heart of this. Because if we look at any process today, right, whether it's a customer-facing process or an internal process or a supplier-facing process, these processes have really evolved into ecosystems that run through many different, digital technologies. And the proliferation of that is growing very quickly, meaning we have more and more technologies around every process. The, regular transactional systems, it's cloud applications, it's devices, it's desktops, it's so many, and it's all getting digitized. And we can also see this, by the way, in the data growth. When you look at the overall growth of data volume in the world, you see that it's, we're at the very early innings still of an exponential explosion of data. And I think that the most digitally forward organizations have figured out ways how to run their execution and run their entire operation on data and intelligence. If you look at Amazon, for example, Amazon has a different organizational model than the traditional business. One person at Amazon sometimes manages 50 people, whereas in a regular organization, one person manages 7 people. Right? You have different organizational dynamics, you have different decision-making structures, and completely different processes because they run their business on data intelligence. And there's other examples, right? If you look at Netflix, right, or other digitally forward companies, they execute pretty much their entire business operation on data and intelligence, and very few companies do that. And I think it's an imperative and a big part of every company's transformation strategy. And that's what we see. That's what we try to enable with our technology and our platform. And it leads to fundamental outcomes. I mean, we see customers that really transform their organization this way, unlocking massive amounts of economic value. It's better experience for their customers, better experience for their employees. And I think it's also the key to achieving sustainability targets, which is going to make a really increasingly important role in the next few years. I'm convinced of that. So I would say it needs to transform the organization. I would like to maybe add two things. I think when we look at the stack today, I think there's really two things missing from the overall data stack. I think the first is that most data and most intelligence isn't driven in real time. So I think we have to make a heavy push towards building real-time systems. And I think the second piece is that most data isn't driving action, right? It's driving insight, but that insight isn't driving action. And if you look at a company, there's very few people that really have an analytical focus. So it's really important that we make data drive actions and not just insight.
Thank you, Alex. And that sort of takes us to the topics around automation and AI, which are necessary to dovetail with data. And Manish Sharma, I know you've done a lot of thinking around this. Has this pandemic driven real progress, or do you think we're doing a lot of treading water, waiting for a more of a normality type situation to return?
I would say that it is not treading water at all. I think it has made a definite, significant change, I think. And one of the things that we are seeing, and I think this was related to your earlier question, but trying to bring it together here is, I think if you're looking at this digital modernization acceleration, that is what is happening right now, happening in a big way. And I think we have coined, because we are seeing this in the market in a massive way. And the word we always use here is super compressed, massive transformation partnerships with our clients. And when you talk about this super compressed transformation timelines, at cloud, what people thought will take 5 years now going to happen in 2 years' time, right? And that is where you see a huge demand coming up, which has already come up actually. Now, if I were to say, so I think there is no back to normalcy. I think it is going to be very, very supercharged, turbocharged acceleration on the AI and automation, because that AI and automation will drive the transformation and the big significant transformation we're talking about. We have seen, I would say, real accelerated adoption from massive partnerships, right, in adoption of AI, cloud, and automation. Both, that could be interesting as a safety measure, and also big time, I think, as a force multiplier. So while we talk about a safety measure and all the cost and all those things, which is about 20%, 80% is a force multiplier for this. And ultimately, it's about orchestrating the technology, processes, and people to work together in a more efficient, synchronized way, right? And when we look at, back to a future ready organizations, we are seeing only 38% were touching AI. And now what we see is almost 63% making AI tangible, scaled deployment across enterprises. So clear answer, there is no treading of water. This is what is driving the change. What we have seen in the last 2 years, I have not seen it in the previous 2 decades. Right, and that's kind of the change that we are seeing and the adoption around the AAA.
Right. Yeah, I think you've confirmed a lot of what we're suspecting, and it's good to hear that from you, Manish. Thanks for that. So one of the things that we're really seeing is this kind of redefining of ecosystems and even industry value chains. And how's this going to unravel as we gravitate to this hybrid economy we see happening? I mean, Cliff, I know you're got a big focus on this now at KPMG. Can you share some of your thoughts here?
Yeah, well, it's not going to be even across all industries. You've got what you might think of as sort of a new reality emerging, in different segments in different industries. For example, you've got a hard reset occurring in areas like brick and mortar retail, hotels, restaurants, hospitality, higher education, even energy. You had a economy that really kind of benefited and surged during the pandemic. Online retail, media companies. You saw food delivery companies emerge. A lot of the home-based businesses, telemedicine, life sciences. You saw companies that just totally, have to be rethought and kind of redeveloped as a result of this. So, kind of the travel and leisure industries, they're going to really have to struggle to rebuild the staffing, the workforce that it's going to take, and that's going to result in kind of rethinking the whole business models. So the industries it's not a one size fits all across these industries. So how these industries adopt digital and kind of the path that they were already on before the pandemic is really defining a new way of working within those sectors. So when you think of digital and you're a hotel chain, or you're a media company, or you're a restaurant, and how you interact with your customers with a hybrid delivery model, how your customer experience unfolds in those hybrid environments is going to really change the very business model that you're operating in. It's going to change how you access technology and how you project the technology to your customer base. And that's the pandemic began that. It accelerated that, and that's not going to slow down. That's going to actually speed up, because in many cases it is a better experience for the customers. And in many cases, even though there will be some return to a physical interactive space, it's not going to be the same as it was before. I think as Thierry and Sandeep and others have pointed out, much of this is very permanent, and it's going to just accelerate as competition evolves and capitalizes on the change that's already started. The real ability to compete is going to be the pace in which you can innovate and the pace in which you can capitalize on the technologies that are emerging. You've got more technologies that are coming online that are enabling new business models, that are enabling new ways of working than we've ever had before. It's very evident in the startup community. So if you look at where venture capital is going, how the startups are thinking about business, compare that to how large established companies are having to kind of run the current model, feed the beast, if you will, as well as start to look at how disruption is coming off their flank. It's going to be a really interesting decade because these startups have a idea and a way of working and a way of serving customers that is new and different. It leverages technologies that are just now emerging: 5G, augmented reality, virtual reality. These technologies will be a much more common way of interacting with your customers, and it's going to be very hard for large companies to make that move without considering how these startups are changing the way traditional businesses are interacting with customers. So that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, Phil, but it's a complicated answer across those industry segments.
That was a great cliff answer. It's a great cliff answer. Thank you. Ravi, Kumar at Infosys, I know you've been very close to some enterprises in industries going through some major change recently, like automotive and financial services. Are you seeing a real redefining at this point?
Absolutely, Phil. Thank you for that, and I'm going to keep it short in the interest of time. We are going to move from an interdependent economy to a hyper-connected economy. Within the organization, as you mentioned, functional silos are getting broken. The cloud is allowing enterprises to reimagine the value chain. You could actually take data from your organization, put it on the cloud, and reimagine and get the network effect on the cloud. Data platforms like Snowflake, BigQuery, Redshift, they allow you to reimagine data on the cloud. Just to give you an example, you could actually take data on your e-commerce site. In fact, many retailers today are struggling on margins on e-commerce versus the physical stores because the returns are higher, the trade promotion is much lower, and they could take the data on the cloud, exchange it with the OEMs, exchange it with the consumer companies, and actually reimagine that network, if I may. Industries are actually transitioning. Automotive companies are now becoming proprietary software companies. For the first time in the history, the 10% GDP of the world, which is about tech GDP or tech companies, have lesser number of developers than the traditional industry, which is 90% of the GDP of the world, that has more developers. That is actually creating more connected products. In fact, the demand which we spoke about is also driven by the fact that it's not just the tech industry which is hiring technology professionals, it's also the traditional industry which is hiring technology professionals. So hyper-connected networks, interdependent to hyper-connected networks, the ability to use data on the cloud and actually reimagine the network, new revenue models, industry transitions across. Retailers want to become financial services companies, oil companies want to become retailers. So there is a whole bunch. Manufacturing companies want to power their super cycles with 5G. All of that is unlocking efficiencies, creating new operating models, changing the competitive landscape. Digitally native companies are competing with traditional firms. Traditional firms are switching industries. And all of this, the underpinning of whether you want to be successful or not, is dependent on how you leverage data for customer experience, good consumer experience. We spoke about AI. AI is going to take a leap into businesses, and that's going to reimagine hyper-connected enterprises. AI is going to get much more democratized. You're going to find more value in AI, and you're going to make it much more responsible to make AI an integral part of large enterprise landscape. So hyper-connected enterprises are going to be the future. Actually, I would say they're already in the present, and it's going to be powered by technology behind it, digital technologies behind it.
Thank you. Thank you, Ravi. And Katie Stein, you're in the process business, and you get very impacted by industries changing, value chain shifting. How are you viewing the makeup of industries and how you're approaching this?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. So, super actually exciting. Again, industry model shifts and connections at the intersection of industry value chains has been going on for a while, although we have seen in the last couple of years an acceleration. And if you think of exactly as it was being said by Ravi, retailers who want to become digital platforms who are becoming global payments or banks. As a supplier, what's most interesting is how we can cross-leverage those capabilities and our talent between and for those shifts. So for example, take financial crime, something that's been honed in the banks for years under the regulatory pressure that they've had, and how, as you look at some of the digital platforms, how we can bring those capabilities and leverage them into their business model ecosystem and leverage some of actually the innovation going on with fintech and other providers into now the ecosystem of born in the cloud platforms. And equivalently, you'll see this across many examples. And so that's where I think as a provider community and as our industry, it's incumbent on us to actually figure those solutions as our own clients change their business model. You'd see similar examples in supply chain as well as all of our clients move to some form or format of as a service, how we bring the knowledge of how we use and harvest data and how we leverage that into their own supply chains and maybe transition them from traditional product manufacturing to aftermarket services or otherwise. And so obviously very exciting time for all of us, and enabled very much by the trends we talked about earlier, which is skilling, it's technology, so cloud enablement, data, analytics, and then it's change management. And I'll just come back to that last point because I think it cuts across every question you've asked, which is we are in a time of great change, but the pervasiveness of change management in our organizations is very, very varied. And therefore, the investments that each of us is making into helping our clients transition and change is at the core of all of this being successful when we come back together next year.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie. Awesome. So just enough time to squeeze in a final thought from Sandeep Dadlani at Mars. Redefining industries. How is your industry? You're across two major consumer industries. How much are they being impacted by this? And are we gravitating to a very different world?
I want to take 3 examples, Disney, Chipotle, and Mars. Before the pandemic, Disney was a theme park cruise line company. Now you subscribe to Disney Plus and you have not canceled the subscription, and their market cap is up about 2 times, although their core industries are eradicated in terms of theme parks and cruise lines. They'll come back, but they will coexist with the new businesses. Chipotle was a small Mexican restaurant. Now you're ordering online, picking up curbside, and 70% of the business has gone to a completely new business model. Mars has launched telehealth for vets. Vets never, tolerated not touching their pets, but today they do comfortably. We have 18 direct-to-consumer propositions, and they are not slowing down. Every part of Mars business is discovering new business models. So when you think about old and new business models existing together, that's not it. The pace of discovery of new business models continues. Fundamentally, every business is just pretending to be in another industry. We are all technology businesses. So, for my peers on this panel, I would encourage them to think about the industry verticals and perhaps have only one industry vertical, a technology vertical.
Thank you, Sandy. That reminds me to cancel my Disney subscription. Unfortunately, in the normal events, we would probably go into the coffee break and carry on with a summary, but we are being ushered onto the next panel. So Alex, Cliff, Debjani, Katie, Marie, Manish, Ravi, Rohit, Sandeep, and Thierry, I really appreciate it. You're incredibly busy people spending the last hour plus with us. It's been fantastic. It's been a great session, and thank you for being part of it.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.